Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have another glorious episode of While We Wait for Marathon, where I jump into extraction games and experiences and try to learn the genre before the release of Marathon so that I may be the greatest runner this world has ever seen. Obviously, I already got the fork, so I'm one step ahead of everybody, but my skills can still be expanded, and I seek to do so. And this week, I played Battlefield Hazard Zone. Yes, Battlefield has an extraction mode. Yes, it is still a thing. And yes, you can even find matches where people are still playing the game. And so that's what I did. Before I talk about my experience, I'll give you straight up what the Battlefield website says, its description of Hazard Zone, so you guys have an idea of what's going on here. Hazard Zone. Inserted as a 4-member squad, you must locate and retrieve critical data drives scattered throughout the battlefield while fighting opposing squads with the same objective and occupying forces. Succeed by gathering the data drives and choosing when to extract before a storm overtakes the area in this high-stakes, one-life experience. Every bullet, every skirmish, and every decision counts. I think that's a pretty fair description of how the mode works. I think a few things may have been changed since the release, and obviously Battlefield 2042's release was a debacle, so I'm sure a lot actually changed throughout the whole game. So obviously I'm not speaking on that because the first time I played it was last week. So I have, I think, about 15 or 20 hours put into it. And what I will say is that out of all the extraction experiences that I've tried, not only on the channel, but across my life, so DMZ, Hunt, Forever Winter, Level 0 Extraction, etc., this is, I think, the easiest extraction experience to step into. If you're first trying, if you want to see kind of like what the extraction experience feels like, and you want a very simplified version of how things work, I think this actually is a pretty good place to start. And I did a live stream. I did a few live streams of Hazard Zone. And one of the chatters, Rage, if you're watching, hello. Hey, this is a personal hello, Rage moment. But Rage said that, I believe the quote was, he refers to Hazard Zone as a dad extraction shooter. What is it? It's basically he's saying that it's a very low skill, entry level kind of starting point, which I think is or maybe he said it's your dad's extraction shooter. A low skill, very entry level extraction experience. And so that cracked me up. And also I believe it's pretty accurate. Basically, you start with usually 3 people because there's not enough people playing the game normally to get like a full lobby. Although finding matches wasn't too hard. I think the longest I ever waited for a match was maybe 5 to 6 minutes. Sometimes I'd have to back out to kind of restart, but it would find players relatively quickly, even at varying points in the day. So evenings, weekends, and even mornings during weekdays, I was able to get into games that were actually functioning. But basically, you load in with up to 4 people, and it's more so like an objective-based multiplayer, like matchmaking kind of experience. But it is PvE, so you do have enemy NPCs running around, and obviously you're kind of limited on the amount of lives you have, although the description that they gave on the website here is not accurate, as you do get an extra life. So if your team wipes, you get to drop in one more time, I'm pretty sure. And also you can find pickups around the map that allow you to redeploy your fallen comrades if they've already died. The gunplay in Battlefield 2042 is fun. Like, Battlefield feels like Battlefield. I don't know that it's really changed since Battlefield 3 in terms of what the FPS aspect of it feels like. To me personally, I couldn't tell you the difference. If you put me into Battlefield 2042 and you put me into Battlefield 3, blindfolded me, having no way, and I just got to like peek my eyes and see everything. I don't even know if I would be able to tell you like between the UIs being different. That's how close to Battlefield this feels, which I think is something that you see kind of along the way with very major franchises. Obviously, Call of Duty kind of changes their feel game to game, but obviously the fans want them to come back to that traditional core Call of Duty sensation that people love. So I'm not saying necessarily that's a bad thing, but that is, it's a Battlefield game. If you've played Battlefield, a little bit floatier in terms of the actual aiming element, while a little more grounded in terms of the character movement. No omnidirection sliding like crazy, but also you have the chaos of vehicles and aircraft and everything impacting the world around you, and really solid kind of like environmental events. But basically, we load into this extraction zone and there's no loot. So you're not like really picking up items that you're going to extract with. You basically just select a class. I had seen online that before loading into a match, there's supposed to be like a buy menu, almost kind of like Counter-Strike inspired, where you would have to utilize the experience or currency gained from your last run maybe, and that would kind of allow you to buy upgraded items before you load in, so you could be kind of rocked out team. From what I could tell, it's just a class-based experience. You can customize your classes, you can alter what stuff you're carrying, and then you load in with that. The thing that does change though is if you're on an extraction streak, which means you extracted the last match or you've extracted multiple matches in a row, you do get access to additional slots to carry like extra tools and stuff like that. So you get like one additional slot for the first extraction. I believe you can carry one additional thing. I think the farthest I ever got was 2 extractions in a row. And so I had a little bit more equipment when I went in. So that'd be things like revive equipment, rocket launchers, extra tactical grenades or lethal grenades, stuff like this. So it's not really the traditional concept of looting through this austere environment with player characters and NPC characters. It's more so like a matchmaking traditional FPS mode with a pretty intense restriction on the amount of lives you have and resources at your disposal. With that being said, that's kind of one of the things that makes it easy to jump into. So you get the taste of this kind of experience of going through this very large map, trying to collect these data drives, and then escape with your life while you have obviously the threat of the NPCs and the players, while also you're not like super torqued about what's happening, because it's not like you're going to lose everything that you're carrying when you die. You're going to get to load in with whatever class you want and whatever kind of hero or character you want, as long as someone else in your party isn't playing as them. So you're not really losing anything when you die, except for the data drives that you've collected within the match. And the data drives don't really have any impact within the game in terms of like what your character can do or what they can get. It's just a high value item that if you extract with it, you get additional experience and points to progress your character. And obviously you get that kind of extraction streak token that I was talking about earlier. One of my really big takeaways from this is I think they did the NPCs very well. The NPCs stand as a threat in the sense that it takes a fairly small number of rounds for them to kill you, while also it takes a very small number of rounds for you to kill them, and they behave in ways that appear logical, albeit not the most highly advanced AI, as the entire Battlefield 2042 experience was built around multiplayer PvP. So it's not something they completely focused on. But with that being said, the threat of them feels accurate. Like I feel like an extraction experience that has PvE elements that isn't exclusively PvE, like, it's not like the Forever Winter where that's the only enemies are non-players. So I think that it's a good idea that the ads or, NPCs in the match that are a threat to you are very susceptible. If you have any level of coordination with your team, you're able to handle them. Now, the problem is if you separate from your team, if you're playing recklessly, if you get surrounded, if you disregard one of their vehicles, they still are a threat, and they can, kill you and cause a bad day for your whole squad. But I think it is a good idea for the player character in a PvPvE extraction mode to feel strong, like to feel like you are the primary entity within this world, and you have to navigate these obstacles. But I don't think that the PvE element should in any way overshadow the PvP encounters, and I think that that's a very good, clear distinction that Hazard Zone sets up. Because in contrast to fighting the NPCs, fighting the players is like very intense still. Obviously, Battlefield kind of has a much more tactical feel to it over, like three-lane Call of Duty maps, or something more traditional FPS centered, just because the scope of what you're playing in is much larger, and the weapon bullet drop is a much more key factor even at shorter ranges. There is this very cool tactical, coordinated experience to be had with fighting the enemy players who are actually other people on the other side of your screen, not just NPCs. And that experience is very fun. And I think that the contrast between the AI and the player characters is done very well here. And I think that the key takeaway is that in Marathon, I'd really like to see a similar time to kill deficit between the player characters and the AI. I want to be able to view the AI as an element that I have to account for, but I don't really want to be like fearing for my life in those encounters. I want it to be an element that I have to think about tactically. And so if I go in with a good plan and I have a good understanding of the mechanics, I want like 8 out of 10 times for me to be able to handle the ads. Whereas with the player characters, that's where I want the maximum intensity. I think that if maybe they add in some sort of insanely strong, like adrenal, so one of these big kind of what would go on to become the hunters in Halo, maybe would be a good comparison point for people who haven't played the original Marathon games. Think of a big hulking enemy for monster. Maybe running into one of those would be cool, and if they sunk, a lot more damage to take down, that would be a fun experience. But I think on the whole, I would like the PvE elements to be not necessarily the heart racing part of the experience, but more so the knowledge, skill, game understanding aspect of Marathon's total experience. And I think Hazard Zone does a really good job of kind of juxtaposing those two elements. It's very clear when you're in a firefight with an AI or you're in a firefight with a real dude most of the time, unless they're, playing like a complete bot. The other element that I really enjoyed about Hazard Zone was the weather. The weather mechanics are very cool. Having a huge storm roll in or a tornado and some of the stuff where, the rain's going sideways and vehicles are getting flung through the air. Even if just for the visual kind of disparity between the standard, weather that you load into and then the weather events, makes for an interesting additional layer of thought and planning that has to go into your runs. And maybe determining whether or not you extract with the data drives you have or try to play out, a little bit longer and extract with more drives. I really enjoy that, and I think that's something that we kind of heard hinted at in some of the leaks, talking about a map that's kind of has variable elements. I believe came from one of the Oops Leaks things, or potentially one of the Game Post articles. I would like to see them kind of integrate elements that alter the environment a little bit more. I think that's a good, fun way to keep the gameplay interesting match to match, because those things aren't guaranteed to occur, and to have the game knowledge to know, okay, I need to find shelter, or I need to utilize this tool or equipment during this time, or hey, I'm not going to be able to have a vehicle at this time. Not necessarily that those exact mechanics are going to appear in Marathon, but the concept that it's something that you have to think about is really cool, and I enjoyed that in Hazard Zone. Overall, for being like a very bare bones, you're not capturing a bunch of loot, you're not losing all of your stuff on death, you're still getting XP at the end of every match. Extraction is kind of like the cherry on top to help you level up a little bit faster. I mean, these are all elements that obviously I kind of don't want to see one for one in a game where, primary gameplay is an extraction experience. But for something to dip your toes into, it is really fun. And I do think that Bungie can learn something from the Hazard Zone experience, in the sense that they are creating, arguably the first AAA extraction game, and they're trying to bring in a very wide audience. And there's a lot of quality of life stuff about being able to load into a match and not necessarily have like active comms with your teammates where you're coordinating at the same level that you need for like a dungeon or a raid in Destiny, but you're still able to extract and get items and have a successful game mode. I think that is something that Bungie should maybe aim to replicate within Marathon, so they can garner a wider audience that will probably appreciate the core mechanics of the game as a whole. Things like, emotes and pinging, to make sure you have communication. I know they don't have pings in Destiny, I think, which is kind of crazy to me. for a game that's so based heavily around communication and telling your friends where the threat is and what needs to happen next, that you really don't have an option outside of the chat box or voice chat. I think that that's something that absolutely would be pivotal to have in Marathon, a ping system, or even in here where you have a button you can hold down and you can say, hey, I need ammo, I need health, let's hold back, let's get in a tighter formation, let's find a vehicle. Emotes like that kind of express those ideas. I was able to use them effectively in Hazard Zone, which is not something that I've done kind of in other games. I feel like emotes in most games are relegated to disrespecting people or being silly. But to see it in Hazard Zone, and I was able to use them effectively to kind of convey the quick ideas and thoughts that I had to my team, like let's retreat, let's push forward, attack, these kind of things. That was cool. That was really good, and I think Bungie could expand on that in a way that makes it so that people who aren't going to sit down and chat with whoever the random person that they match with in their next lobby is still able to kind of have an effective game, regardless of what level of communication they're truly operating at. And I really, really dig that. So overall, I think that Hazard Zone is something that you should give a try, especially if you have Game Pass or something. You can try it out for free. It is fun. It's very casual. It feels like getting to a lawn, standard FPS match. But obviously the goals are a little bit more direct. It's fun to plink off the enemy AI, as they run around. And the engagements with other players is fun if you enjoy Battlefield kind of Battlefield FPS gameplay. So overall, I recommend checking it out. It's obviously not the grandest, most deep extraction experience, but I think that, like I said, my key takeaway from playing Hazard Zone is there's a lot of quality of life, ease of access stuff that I think Bungie could actually look at, which is kind of funny to say because obviously the history of Battlefield 2042 is not something that most game developers are trying to recreate with their experiences, but I do think that it is something that Bungie kind of look at here and go, hey, they kind of made a very accessible version of this extraction mode, and maybe look at how can Bungie expand on that and take it more into the niche extraction genre with all the elements and layers that come involved with building a purely extraction game, while also retaining that accessibility that I talked about. So yeah, good times. Hazard Zone was fun. Like I said, check it out if you have access to it. Maybe don't go out of your way to buy it though, because not that many players are jumping in currently, so you might be at a loss if you enjoy it too much and you're not able to find full lobbies. But it was fun. I definitely do think there's some cool stuff that I learned from it, and I'm excited to get into the next extraction experience. Let me know what game you guys want me to play next. I know I gotta play Tarkov at some point coming up, and I think people are also talking about Helldivers, which I don't know if it's purely an extraction kind of experience, but obviously kind of akin to extraction. So I think I might gonna check that out. My great language here. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought. If you've played Hazard Zone, the games you want me to check out, consider liking, subscribing, the YouTube stuff if you want to. And cool beans. All right, thanks for watching. Love you. Sweet dreams. Bye.